quite a broad title. Soil is the heart and soul of our planet. It's degrading, and it's one that's quite resonant for things at the moment. But we need to decide, acknowledge what is we're talking about as degraded soil. And it's quite a broad description, so it's not pointing fingers directly at farmers. It really covers a lot of things. So basically, it's lower fertility, low organic matter, poor structure, increased erodibility, and increased acidity. Often practice associated with traditional farming practices, but equally, it's down to flooding, it's down to building sites, it's down to road building, it's down to everything else that goes with it. We're not the only people at fault for this. But what effect does this have to you as a farmer? Largely, as your soil gets worse, we need more fertilizer to keep crops growing. The fertilizer we apply is less efficient, so more of it gets lost down into river courses, into water, causing damage further downstream. There's more pollution. There's more eutrophication. If you see places, you see pictures of the green lake on the edge of America, which is basically where all of the phosphates from their farming system is finding their way in the sea and just sitting there killing fish, killing bacteria. And we also get to porous problems with soil. So we actually get more flooding as a result of poorer soil. So we need to look at ways of dealing with it. We also get more waterlogging, and so we get more denitrification, and wetter ground releases more nitrates. NO2 is a greenhouse gas and is one of the biggest problems we have in farming is greenhouses. Forget methane, NO2 is more of a problem. So what are our solutions? Simplistically, increase the amount of plant and animal material going back into the fields. Design crop rotations to help soil health. I got to be careful about criticizing conventional farming systems, but having been a conventional farmer, running a normal farming rotation of wheat, beans, wheat, oats, back into beans again, it's not a very soil healthy rotation. Encourage soil organisms, both those that build the soil and those that release nutrients. That's really the lifeblood of our soil. Cover soil with continuous plant cover. So let's not have overwintered bare fields or stubbles. Let's have things growing all the time. Ben, my colleague, has already had a presentation on agroforestry earlier. It's one of the directions we can go. Trees are a really good way of conserving, building up carbon, but they're also very good at putting the roots down, bringing up nutrients from deep that we can then use. You imagine the leaf from the tree then fertilizes the crop for the next time. So it's all part of a virtuous circle. Reduce soil compaction from animals. And we've got to know what we're looking at. So let's improve the monitoring. So all in all, the view is that soil health needs to be the very heart of farming practices, not the aftermath of what we do. One of the things that's been slagged off recently in the press particularly and through the uninformed is livestock being the cause of all of our problems. Absolute rubbish. The environmental benefits of animals, there have been some very interesting pictures on Twitter but the best way to convert grass into food, because we as humans cannot digest grass. No matter how we try it, we cannot turn a field of grass into something that keeps us going. We can if we use livestock to do it. Let's get livestock doing what they're good at. Increase biodiversity. Again, up in Snowdon, I come from Devon, Dartmoor and Exmoor. When you see the benefits of having livestock grazing within a big, broad area, they graze the areas they like. They trample on the stuff they don't want. They nibble away at the bases of trees so the trees grow better and better shaped. It's all part of the way that we've always farmed in the past, and we need to revert back to it a little bit. It's also a source of soil fertility. Organic farming systems are dependent on livestock manures coming in. We can't farm as organic farmers without livestock. And it's well proven there is more diversity having mixed farms than monoculture farms. I come from Devon, traditionally a livestock area, same as Wales up here. You have arable crops, you have livestock. The arable crop feeds the livestock, some of it gets sold. It's a perfect circle. So what can we do? If we're going to be buying meat, let's buy local, buy regional, and buy organic. And I know I work for the Soil Association, but it can be in that order. If you can get local meat where you know it gets from, get local meat from a farm you know and trust. Organic is a certified label. You know what it means, and it may be that's what you want to do. Concentrate on grass-fed, not intensive. We had Pasture for Life earlier on as well. A grass-based farming system has environmental and health benefits for us. And let's go for UK meat. Let's not refuse to allow imported meat into our diets, because the supermarkets will not stock imported meat if no one buys it. It won't take very long for them to change. It's not very well up there. There's an old statement: a herbal lay is a farmer's fertilizer merchant, food merchant, and a vet all in one. Things like chicory are wormers. They actually reduce the worm burden on animals. If you get down, apparently it's been a drought this year in some places. Those people growing herbal lays have got green fields because the roots of the plants are going down deep to find the moisture. And in the same time as finding the moisture, they're pulling up the nutrients from deep, like phosphates and potashes, and bringing it back to the surface where the other grasses then benefit. So we can get a good circular economy going within the soil. You'll see this one again, Cotswold seeds. I'm not recommending you always use Cotswold seeds, but they've got a really good picture here, and they do sell some good products. Different crops, different grasses have different rooting depths. So lucerne and sunflower, it's not a crop we're going to grow a lot in the middle of Wales. Maybe it's more of an East Anglia crop, but they're deep rooting. Cocksfoot, amazing drought-tolerant grass, and it puts its roots down deep. But we look at the ryegrasses, Italian ryegrass and perennial, and white clover, the traditional grass mixes. As soon as the moisture is there, as soon as the fertilizer is there, that crop will not benefit from it, and it's wasted. So we've got to look to using different crops. So vetches, sweet clovers, even red clover is deeper rooted. Chicory, ribgrasses, and the plantains that or zorbs that sometimes see in the mixes. They're all good, deep rooting things which keep these diverse lays working. Grazing management is also important. I hope you can see what it says there. This is a grass sample dug up and looking at the root from a grass plant that's been cut every 2 weeks. It was done in a pot, it's not in a field, but it's what happens. Compare that with cut to 2 inches every 2 weeks, and then to cut to 2 inches every 4 weeks. So if we can have an extended grazing rotation, we actually get more roots. That's building up soil organic matter and carbon in the soil. That's what carbon sequestration is about. So managing our grass. If you're an intensive farmer, dairy farmer, having a back fence when you're strip grazing, so that the fields that you started grazing are available, you don't graze again, so the cows don't run back onto it. It's a little bit more time, but it means that you're building your soil better. If you're growing herbal lays, so we said, they do need a different sort of management practice, so you need to learn what we're doing. And if we are doing trials through innovative farmers who are looking at the way to manage herbal lays, because they'll sell you the seed, they don't tell you the way to manage it, or maybe they'll tell you they want you to manage it, it doesn't fit your farm. So again, we need to look at learning some lessons. And clovers, one of the most wonderful crops you can grow on any farm, organic or conventional. You can replace 150 kilograms of nitrogen a hectare by doing so. I heard a figure calculated yesterday that the natural gas used to make nitrogen fertilizer to grow wheat in the UK is the same as 350,000 houses. So that's how much gas we use to grow to make the nitrogen fertilizer. But up there, we are surrounded by nitrogen. We just need to get it into the plant by using clovers. The red line is a clover monoculture, fertilized at 450 kilos of nitrogen a hectare. These two lines are yield of grass on different clover proportions on different nitrogen applications. So if you're not organic, you can still use a bit of nitrogen to grow your grass, but you will out-yield a pure grass lay by using clovers. Management, but you can do it, and you don't have to spend the money. And finally, for those of you, lime is the cheapest input. If you've got acidic soil, nitrogen, all nutrient utilizations go down. We start getting problems. Put lime on. It's cheap. It's easy. Excuse me. As I said, improve crop rotations. Look to using grass lays and rotations. It's not the best pictures. It was taken off a friend, but this is from Dorset a week ago where they just had a drought. This field is a diverse lay, lots of grass, and here we have a traditional grass lay planted at the same time. Planted on the same day. They've both had they're undersown under barley, so there was a whole crop taken. One of them is stocking at 10 cows an acre, the other one is stocking at 5 cows an acre and looking dry. So we can use these lays to maintain grass even in a dry area. And we're talking at cropping, but looking at the rest of it really, we look at the whole rotation of the system. Conventional farmers use the gross margin of oilseed rape, the gross margin of a wheat to justify the choice of varieties. But look at the rotation. Organic farmers work on rotations. It's a 7-year rotation. You make a lot of money in 1 year, you may not make so much money in the second, but on average, you get it right. Look at spring cropping. Winter crops are a very, very expensive crop to grow. So let's grow spring crops more. We can also have other crops during the winter. Use the crop residues as nutrient sources. If you're growing arable crops, sell the straw, buy it back as manure from your neighboring farmer. It's a fertility source. Chop the straw if you don't need it. We need to value the manure and compost we can get. And as some people started talking, we need to look at the soil as the carbon soil bank. So that if you take a crop off the field, you're removing carbon. You need to return it, or you need to build the carbon in the soil so that you can lose it later on in the rotation. If you grow veg crops, we know it's quite destructive to the soil to grow potatoes, to grow vegetable crops. So follow it with a grass lay. Let the grass do the work of improving the soil. Bring it back to where you want to be. If you have to plough, don't plough every year. Plough rotationally. Soil organisms, really, really useful products to have. Integrated pest management is a term used quite commonly to justify actions. But actually, if you don't use insecticides, you get insects. You get bugs. And when you get bugs, the bugs, like this ground beetle, lives on slugs. So if you use an insecticide, you've killed your beetle, and then you have to kill your slug as well. So trying to get a better management. Reduce ploughing and intensity of cultivations. It might seem strange for an organic farmer to recommend reducing ploughing, and it may not be possible to reduce the ploughing, but have we got to use a power harrow every year? Have we got to trash the ground totally for every crop we put in? Let's look at other ways of doing it. Because the earthworm is the most useful thing we can have in the ground. We also talk about continuous plant cover. For those of you who are followers of trends in farming, no-till farming, whereby there is a constant ground cover. They've always got cover crops growing. They're drilling into them. There's always something growing. Because we're harvesting the sunlight and sticking it into the ground as carbon, either by burying the wastes from the product or even just letting it rot back down again. Cover crops, green manures, undersowing are all good techniques. It's a field of maize. Maize is a funny crop. It's a brilliant crop if you're a dairy farmer. Not such a good crop if you're in the soil because it's often harvested late, often when it's wet, and often there's the excuse that it's too late to put something on, so I'm going to leave it over winter. You're not really meant to under environmental rules, but we still do. But here's an example. This is taken from a farm in just outside Tiverton down in Devon. just about see the grass beginning to grow there. That was sown into the growing maize crop when the crop was that high. So he's designed a drill to grow between the rows. The grass germinates whilst the crop is still not that thick, but then it goes into a sort of dormant state and waits. As soon as you cut the crop, it then grows away. It's been supported down in the southwest by Southwest Water because, as you can see, you've got the wheel marks, you've got the trailer marks. Any sort of slope, that's a flat field, but any sort of slope, the first thing that's going to happen when it rains is the water will run down those wheel marks. But by having this grass growing, and here we've got more of a mustardy sort of crop, it will slow down that movement of water, it will stop that erosion, it will reduce the flooding, and this, when either in a dairy farm grazed in the spring or even a cut for silage in the spring, is a food source for the cows as well. Use of cover crops, crimping them and drilling. Behind this tractor is actually a drill. So we're crimping, rolling it down and planting behind it. So you've got something growing all the time. We talked about agroforestry earlier, 3D farming. I think everyone recognizes that as an example of agroforestry. Orchards is agroforestry. You have two crops. You have sheep and you have apples. But if you put trees at wider rows, we can do that. Now, isn't that an amazing way of growing corn? This is actually in France. I would actually have a lot wider, and we're developing systems now at 30-meter rows. So between here, 30 meters, possibly to that wall over there, you can drive your 24-meter sprayer up and down between the rows every year. You can do everything you want to do, and you've got a crop growing. In an example, which I haven't got a photo, it's early days, an example from the fens of apple trees on the rows. So he's farming in three dimensions. And this year he's earning more money from the apple juice from his apple trees than he is from the barley growing in the crop. Reduce compaction, the sort of things we see. Even sheep grazing, even cattle grazing will cause layers of compaction, which can cause problems. And obviously the worst examples of this sort of thing. He thought he could get away with it. We also need to, as I said, we need to improve monitoring. But one of the significant things is you can drive up and down the field as much as you want in your tractor, smelling the wonderful smell of your tractor. You can get any number of reports done to show that you've got this much P, this much K, your pH is this. Get out and smell it, handle it, pick it up, see what it feels like. There is nothing better than healthy soil to smell. And measure the soil organic matter. Use the same lab, use the same technique every year. Because if you do a different one, they might have a different system. But measure it, not in order to say, I'm brilliant, but to see where there's a trend. If you grow a potato crop, you're going to reduce your soil organic matters. If you plough, it's going to go down. But then you know that you can use cover crops, you can use grass to bring it back up again. And there's a lot of evidence from organic farms that although we plough within the rotation, over the rotation, we end up with soil organic matters rising over every 5 years because we use grass lays in the rotation. The other factor that regenerative farmers, all of this is examples of regenerative farming. This is not organic farming being better. This is not anything. This is just what is now being termed regenerative farming practices. So we're using photosynthesis and healthy soils to collect sunlight, using livestock to sequester carbon by grazing, trampling and manure. Mob grazing, what's called techno-grazing, which I think is something to do with electric fences and timers. But it's all good practices. Conservation agriculture techniques within the rotation, minimizing bare soil, and actually working with, not against nature. So I'm here from the Soil Association, so obviously organic is the solution to all things. Well, it's not a perfect system. There are things with all farming systems which could work elsewhere if we were willing to engage and take them on. Many farming systems use things that we do as organic farmers, and we need to be going back the other way. We can't use their pesticides, we can't use their fertilizers, but we can use the practices. I won't bore you with reading all of that. So from an organic point of view, organic standards, to be an organic farmer, you have to conform with our standards. To sell a product as organic, you have to be certified. And it's based on EU and UK law. Now, that will happen whatever happens in Westminster in the next month, 6 weeks, before we all go to wherever we're going to end up. The basic rule is no artificial fertilizers or pesticides can be used. There are a small number of approved inputs that we do permit, normally based around natural products, but on all cases we have to get permission from the certifier, of which we are one, to use. So it's not just a question of thinking it's natural and safe, I can use it. It needs to be one that we know is safe. The rules require all livestock, including chickens and pigs, to have access to free grazing for as long as possible, so genuine free range. Antibiotics can be used to treat ailments. Welfare is highly important, but what we can't be doing is using antibiotics as a preventative technique. So the idea that you inject all your calves when you bring them in the winter because they're going to get ill, actually it's all about making sure the shed is healthy in the first place, and then they don't get ill. No prophylactic treatment. So dry cow tubes are not permitted across the herd. We do permit it on individual cows for health reasons. Wormers are permitted under a health plan, but again, not just as a routine. Because we measure those fecal egg problems, then if you do a fecal egg count and you've got worms, you can worm them, is the way we work. And the principle is to manage to prevent rather than to plan to use. Just talk you through, if I've convinced anybody, I'm doing quite well. If I convince anybody to go organic, there's a 2-year conversion process. With livestock, you're required to use organic management techniques all the way through, but organic inputs for the last 6 months. So you don't have to be buying, to convert a dairy herd, you don't have to be buying organic food from day one. You've got a period of adapting the land as well. And effectively, a crop sown after the 2nd year anniversary of conversion is organic, and calves born after the conversion period. But the cow on the farm when you convert will never be organic. I've said that already. That's me finished. Just to highlight 2 other things. We are part of a group called Innovative Farmers. Innovative Farmers funds and supports farmer-led research. Check on our desk or check online, Innovative Farmers. But projects such as Agroforestry, projects such as diverse lays, such as defoliating oilseed rape to see if it can reduce flea beetle. Biochar as a feed additive for cattle to see if it can reduce methane production. They're the sort of projects we're looking at. And also for anybody who's in the Pembrokeshire or near Pembrokeshire, we are involved with something called the Fabulous Farmers, which is a European project, which is looking at all these agroecological techniques I've been talking about, and looking at setting up farmer groups as discussion groups and regional groups to work together, to work out how to use these techniques possibly properly, and maybe to our benefit as well as to the benefit of the supply chain who's happy to sell us the products. Okay? Thank you.